For those of you who are newer to Rejuvi and do not yet have access to the platform, know that going to Rejuvi, which is a data and technology based organization in a space that you don't find them very much, leadership development, modern leadership development. And so to log into the platform, you're going to go to rejuviventure.com and you're going to see in the top right a login button. And you're going to see what we call that the happy Rejuvi family. And so I'm going to log in. So immediately when you log into a platform that is all not about rolling out another product to your business, but it is about helping you to build your leadership capacity, it's going to start asking you some different questions. It's going to start putting some different functionality in front of you, right? And so the first thing it's saying, hey, Jennifer, how do you want to serve your leadership bench today? And one of the interesting things about this is it doesn't assume that all of those leaders are the same type of leaders. And so in the Rejuvi software as a service, you can be in the butterscotch world because that would be everything for your kind of executives, your directors on up. But if you actually went to the purple world, you would see that this is for service leaders. If you went to the blue world, right, it would be for team leaders. If you went to the red world, it would be for sales leaders. And there's a green world coming second quarter, which is for expert leaders. So let's just say that today we were actually working with the directors inside of our organization. And so Jennifer's logging in and she's being asked, how do you want to serve your leadership bench today? Do you want to do some leader population work, right? Do you want to do some data collection work? Do you want to do some reporting and analytics work? Do you want to do some training and development work? And so therefore you need access to some of the content intelligence type of resources that we've been talking about. This is it. This is your intent to measure capacity over time, right? So we've talked about three barriers that your software as a service actually has to take down. And one of those is about it has to give you these modern models of productivity to differentiate leadership. Number two, it has to have real-time data to support it, and it has content intelligence to drive it. So what we want to do, I think, for people today is to just go into a segment of each one of those three barriers that can be broken down by a modern leadership software as a service. So if I was at the point where I said, yeah, I'm in, right? I'm all in. I want to measure leadership capacity. So I know that the first thing I have to do is I have to understand how to define the whole. And so in that case, let's just kind of stay in the senior leadership world. Actually, I'll change this up just a little bit. I'm going to go into the sales world. And so because I'm trying to understand the modeling, right? I'm trying to understand the modeling for what modern leadership actually looks like for a sales leader. Right now, I can go into resources to go, and I can go into a folder called Modeling and Profiles. And I'll see several resources and several more folders. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up and I'm going to preview this thing called the Rejuvi Sales Insight and Intelligence Snapshot. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up a picture of the building blocks or the constructs of what excellence looks like in a modern way for a sales leader. And I think there are two things to take a look at here, right? Earlier, Charlie, I heard you use the phrase IQ, EQ, AQ, and that's your way of describing, sales leadership excellence, at the human level. See, know, do. C is a lot like your IQ or your idea quotient. Know is a lot like your EQ or your emotional quotient. Do is a lot like your AQ or your agility quotient. But what makes this really unique, what makes the modeling really unique, the modern model of productivity for a modern leader isn't just about what makes me strong. It's really about the series of actions that help me to run my business from the strategic intent of the overall organization to how I'm actually running my territory as a sales leader, from business unit intelligence to putting together targeted goals for my market segments to actually implementing them on a day-to-day basis as I move from account to account, right? And if you wanted to take a look at the detail that is associated with each one of these building blocks that represents this new modern model of productivity, you can just flip to the back, right? There it is. Each of those building blocks are unpacked to competencies. And while we don't have the practices here for each of these building blocks in terms of how I'm running my sales territory, it gives you a lot of prompting questions for what those practices actually represent with some very critical questions, right? So I think that as I'm gonna close this particular piece out, but if we go back to our modern leadership platform, the one that's about building our leadership capacity over time, it has to break this barrier for you called give me a modern model of productivity and help me to continually understand what excellence looks like for all of my leaders, right? That it absolutely has to do that. I'm actually going to hop to the service world, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in this button called resources to go, which is helping me to understand how I might get to some content intelligence, how I might get to resources to improve it. And there we go. There's, my modeling profiles. But instead of opening up the model for what service leadership looks like, I'm going to go into this folder called Side to Side. And I'm going to actually preview this one called Rejuvi Lead, Rejuvi Sales, Rejuvi Service, and Rejuvi Team Insight and Intelligence Side to Side. Because you're right, Vid, there are nuances for how competencies and actions actually grow up and come alive inside of an organization, from your leaders who are at more of an entry level to those who are more at an exit level. And this particular document will help you inside of your modern leadership software as a service that's going to help you build your capacity over time. This is what you're building, right? This is how you're building capacity for your team leaders all the way through your executive leaders, right? I want to take people through that because, when you take a look at the modeling that exists inside of a modern leadership platform, it should give you not only the competencies like workflow command. Workflow command makes a team leader really, really strong.
Right.
But those are the things that make the leader strong. If you flip to the modeling for how that team leader is actually going to, run his or her operational line, you're going to look at this little piece right here on the right. There are business practices that we know that are going to help operationalize that workflow command, like workflow mapping, right? Like people capability and process capacity workflows. That's how it actually gets done. Now, that's the modeling piece. And it's not just that. I think you highlighted, Charlie, how the competencies for a leader start to connect to the practices that run an operational line. What you're talking about is shifting to the second barrier that has to exist inside of a modern leadership platform. The second barrier that has to be broken, the functionality that has to exist, is you have to be able to give your leaders and your teams and your overall business real-time feedback on that model. Like it's not enough just to talk about it or to have it. You have to give them real-time feedback in an instructional way so that they go, oh yeah, I see exactly where I'm at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the start of logging into your platform. I'm Jennifer, and today I'm not looking for the modeling. I don't want this modern model of productivity to differentiate leadership. What I'm looking for is real-time data to support it. So I could actually be in the lead world, and I could say, I want to go into my leader population, and I actually want to go into my org summary. And I want the I want the snapshot. I want the build to sustain tour. And just to make it a little bit easier for people to see, I'm going to minimize my screen just a tiny bit here so you can see the whole thing. This is, in the case of BlackRock Steel, this is a snapshot of their, what we call build to sustain capacity. Right now, and we are in the Rejuvi team product. So this means they're directors on up. This means that all of the directors inside of BlackRock Steel are operating in what we would call a 69% build to sustain leadership capacity. That means, think of it as like, think of it like a video, always say gap to ceiling, right? There is 31% more to go to actually excellence. And each one of these little maps right here, each one of these little dots represents a kind of a heat mapped understanding of all of the behaviors that add up to excellence for these leaders. Like, this is a collective understanding. Can you imagine the power of a leader, a team, a business being able to log into a platform and to understand a real-time view of how much leadership capacity they actually have based on two elements? One element being the strength of their leaders from C to know to do, just like Charlie said, from IQ to EQ to AQ, as well as how they're building and sustaining their business from the strategic intent of the organization all the way through the way that they implement. Can you imagine right there? And all the little electrodes of like what you're good at and what you're not so good at right there in front of you.